There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a review of an Australian novel that I read just a few weeks ago and absolutely adored. It is called Friends and Dark Shapes by Kavita Bedford, a 2021 novel. And let me tell you why I loved it and why you may or may not love it as much as I did. It's very much of a character-centered novel. There isn't much story here, but also almost equally, it is a setting novel. The story is set with pretty much modern times in a suburb of Sydney, Australia, and I believe that suburb is called Redford, or it might be Red. I think it's Redfern, actually. I'm not very good with the geography of Australia. And our unnamed protagonist is a 29-year-old Anglo-Indian Australian. In other words, her father, who has recently died, was English, and her mother was Indian. And she has grown up, I think, her whole life in India. Her father died less than a year ago, I think. Her mother has gone back to India to grieve and to kind of, we're not really sure if she's ever coming back to Australia. And the protagonist is living in a share house or a guest house. I have lived in a share house in Tokyo, and this novel brought that kind of living arrangement to life very vividly. I'm going to read you a section in a minute to give you an idea of the writing style, and in the writing style and the approach to creating fiction makes this an unusual work of fiction that just really worked for me. But if you need some story, this ain't for you. I fell in love with this unnamed 29-year-old Anglo-Indian Australian female protagonist. And she is so absorbed in everyone she encounters, not just her friends in the share house, but everybody she encounters in her travels throughout Sydney, including her part-time freelance work as a journalist. And she just kind of loses herself in her environment, including the people. And she loses herself with palpable love for everyone and everything she sees. She's not Buddha. I don't mean to say that she's Buddha, but she's just a very loving person, and that kind of a character can often make me woof my cookies, but it was done with such a light touch here, and I really adored her. And as you read through the novel, you realize that she has a mountain of grief to work through. You become more aware of the fact that she is, in the root of her being, someone who is just really sensitive to, open to, appreciative of everything and everyone around her in a way that if I can't help loving her, I don't think you would be able to either. Because if that's fake, that's the worst kind of person to put me in a room with. But that there's also a strategy of procrastinating, dealing with this mountain of grief she has about the recent death of her father, and also coming to terms with things about his life. And this is where the dark shapes part of the title comes in, that he's struggled with depression, and then he died, and so she's got a lot to deal with. She loved her father dearly. I think she loves her mother too. And you get to a certain part in the novel, and you kind of have I don't know about if this will be your experience, but for me, I realized, yeah, she's kind of putting that off by just kind of being at one with all the people. And not just being at one, because that would get old so fast, but that she has such a perceptive eye, and the characters just jump off the page. You will sometimes, many of them, more than half of the characters that she focuses her radiant perception on, you only see in that one chapter. And for some readers, that kind of ephemerality didn't work for them. I loved it so much. If this review is going to be of any use to you, you need to listen to the things I'm saying. Ooh, that's a brilliant comment. And bounce my comments off what kind of a reader you are. Every professional review I found said it didn't work because it was too ephemeral. It wasn't there wasn't enough of a cohesive narrative. I think cohesion in fiction is really overrated. Give me a character that I can travel around with as she opens herself and sees so deeply into people and just creates such a kind of rambunctious love of the world. I don't need anything more than that. So, if that is far from the kind of reader you are, this might not be for you. Let me give you a little bit more of an idea of who some of the other people are. In that house, there is a former teen model whose parents escaped the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, a Palestinian guy whose parents want him to marry a Muslim, and somebody they nickname Bowerbird. He's the most recent guy that has joined the household, and he is a guitarist from California. Our protagonist falls in love with each and every one of them, and they fell in love with her. And like I say, by the end of the novel, you've got a series of vignettes about these people and all the other people she encounters. I'm going to close by reading you a short section early in the novel, and it's not a spoiler because there's no plot to spoil people. And this is about her going out on one of her first freelance journalist assignments. It's just over a page long. To pay the rent, I've begun working as a freelance journalist. I have found another part-time job working for an organization in the suburbs teaching media skills, which provides me with an office a couple of days a week. And the rest of the time, I wander around the city, hustling for new jobs and pitching stories. Today, I am meeting Paul, a photographer. I contacted him when I saw some work he did about everyday moments of Sydney, specifically in the city's suburbs, which people don't normally care to take photos of or talk about. Paul tells me his girlfriend has just found out she's pregnant, and so he needs work that is flexible. But also he wants to take photos of subjects he cares about, which is always a fine balance, he says. He keeps stopping halfway through talking to blow his nose and then apologize. It's the hay fever, he says. This city goes Poland crazy from the wattle in the springtime. Paul and I are going to meet with a woman who has set up a hijab clothing store in a mall in a suburb out west. In the car driving to the clothing store, he tells me he spends the rest of his time working as a night stay for people with disabilities. It is back and heart-breaking work, he says. Some of the people who work as night carers in the disability services are like him, who has a brother with a disability, and so they come at it with so much love. But they feel it all too much because it is at home and at work, and there is often little separation of the self. And often these are the people who leave after a while. Some of the others don't understand so much, and the night shift pays all right. But they take all the outbursts and bodily problems of the people personally, and to survive, they grow in armor, and they roll their eyes and make jokes, and roughly heave the clients about like feeble pieces of flesh. And often it is these people who stay. He has a favorite client who often asks him to come in the afternoon rather than at night, so he can have company in the sunlight. And they go to a park near the clinic, and there is a little ice cream shop close by, and it is their ritual to get ice cream and then feed pieces of the waffle cone to the pigeons. This man laughs so much when the birds come that it is infectious, and Paul always leaves feeling lighter and happier. That is the truth of someone's character. How a person makes you feel after you walk away from spending time with them. Well, if you didn't love that passage, you might not care for the book. This is my favorite passage in the book. I was hooked from this little excerpt on. And so there is the character of the unnamed 29-year-old protagonist. She draws these stories out of people. And there is the kind of experience this novel offers you. I think you should try it. Thanks for watching.